Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I do this through one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And you can learn more at my website, illuminatingsouls.com. But for now, the angels and I are here to co-create a beautiful, soothing, and comforting sanctuary where you can replenish, where you can take a deep breath and know that you are loved. As I've shared with you before, this podcast is born of two of my favorite forms of self-care, connecting with the angels and listening to a sleep podcast. And just last night, I tuned into one of my own episodes and found it to be so soothing that I dropped off to sleep within 20 minutes. So whether you listen during your waking hours or you use this as a sleep tool, it is truly my blessing to support you. As I record this, it's a little bit later in the morning than I usually record, but I've had the loveliest morning so far. I got to facilitate an angel session for a wonderful person. I then recorded a video and published it to share with my mailing list about my new oracle deck, the Earth Angels Oracle, that I'm so excited to be able to share with you, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes if you're interested. And then I wondered if this would be a good time to record this episode, because usually by this time of day things are a bit noisy around here. But it's a little bit overcast, and I think it might be dampening the neighborhood noise, so I'm going to give it a go, and we'll see how we do. I am in one of those expanses of sweetness where I'm not feeling really pressured to get anything done, and so much of what I crave to do feels like an invitation. Just like recording this episode to you feels like a sweet invitation. And so I want to invite you to come into this space too. To just allow yourself to take a breath and let go of whatever came before this moment. It'll be waiting for you after the episode ends, so it's okay. And for the next little while, to allow yourself to be carried away like you're on a gentle, puffy cloud where you can access love and light and inspiration that is available to us just a bit above ground level. You know, there's an adage that I love that is based on an Einsteinism that I, of course, will not say properly. But it says something along the lines of sometimes problems cannot be solved at the level at which they exist. And you know, I am a big fan of the intellect and figuring things out and problem solving and all of that. But this adage, this pearl of wisdom, reminds me that sometimes all we have to do is bathe in the brighter energies, and things have a way of dissipating and falling into place. When I used to attend the University of Santa Monica, when I attended, we met one weekend a month, October through June, and classes would go from Friday night, then all day Saturday, and I mean all day, from 10 until 9, and then Sundays 9 until 7, so it was a really long weekend. And then we would have the rest of the month to go about our lives. And I always found that in the week or so leading up to my USM weekend, I would have so many things I would want to talk about in the trios, because that's how we learned. We went into groups of 3 and rotated between the client and the observer and the counselor as we learned different spiritual psychology skills. And so I would have all of these things I would want to talk about that I was triggered by. I'm upset because, fill in the blank, God, politics, family, my body, whatever it was. I had so much material that I was going to work on in the trios. I'd have my list. And then what would happen? I would walk into the building, which was a gorgeous, glorious energy field. And I would see all of my classmates, my friends, and we would hug and fall in love with each other all over again. And then they would do a centering prayer, and we would chant and do a 5-minute peace meditation. And wouldn't you know that almost always, whatever had so much charge for me before I entered that building, it would dissipate. It might still be there, but it wouldn't be there with the charge I had experienced prior to coming back into the classroom. And it doesn't mean that I didn't have any juicy material to work on in my trios. I certainly did and still do. We are all human beings that are ever evolving and learning, and I promise you I have my emotional and mental and spiritual material to continue to work with in this lifetime. But what I have found is coming into these beautiful heightened energy fields allows us to take a breath and gain altitude. And sometimes things can just be cleared through grace. Maybe the things that we feel so entangled with in our earthly mode become a lot less sticky when we come into the divine light. And that certainly has been my experience over the years. It's one of the reasons, there's many reasons that I love the work that I do. It's deeply fulfilling on many levels. But it continues to orient me to the light. So if I'm feeling challenged by something in my life, and not something that is profoundly inflammatory, I just mean general human curriculum, I find facilitating classes and sessions is the best thing for me because it brings me into this vibrational sanctuary. And it reminds me of all that is good and beautiful and loving and light-filled and sacred in the world and in my life. And as I reconnect with that, something within me grows lighter. And life becomes a little bit more graceful. So my hope is that this broadcast can serve you in this way. Whether you listen to the first 20 minutes when the angels are here, whether you skip to Storytime, which comes in a little while, or whether you listen to the whole episode, that you will find what you need here. because it's truly a blessing to support you. So again, I just invite you to take a breath and let it out. And yes, I know you are breathing. It's one of the prerequisites for having a lifetime on this planet is to allow the autonomous nervous system to breathe for you. But this breath is an intentional breath. So just take a deep breath in on purpose, with purpose, and let go. Exhale. Let go of whatever it is, whatever your it is. To just let it go, even if it's just for the next 60 seconds. I remember I was doing some angel circle or something, and Josephus, the group of guides I channel, they said, leave your problems at the door. You can always pick them up again on your way out. And I love that. Leave your problems at the door. You can always gather them back up if you want them later on. But to just come into this beautiful, pure energy field that is filled with love for you. For you, because you are a big, beautiful, bright soul, worthy of so much goodness and light. You know, as I record this, I'm looking outside of my office window, and it has been very overcast, and even in the short amount of time that I have been speaking with you, the blue has emerged in the sky, but there's this one puff of cloud. It's just this big puff, and it's drifting very quickly across my window. And I'm going to affirm that this puff of cloud is a metaphor for our problems, that we are allowing to drift away as easily as a cloud moves on the breeze. So just take a beautiful breath in and affirm that this is so. And I'm going to call the angels in to be with us. They are already here, but I love sharing the ritual with you. So just get comfortable, cozy, snuggle on up in whatever way works best for you. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here, and I am so grateful that you are inviting us to be here with you now. Angels, I know you are always with us. It is just that we lose sight of you in consciousness sometimes. But I ask that you bring forward waves of love and healing, lightness of spirit, and brilliant, shimmering love and service to each of our beloveds hearing this message, helping each one of us remember who we are as beloveds of this universe, helping us remember that we carry within us magic and creativity and light and beauty. And angels, I ask that you continue shining love upon each of our beautiful friends hearing this message. Because I know whenever they hear this message, you will be with them in live time, because this is how divine love works. So dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in again and letting it go, whatever it is, letting it, capital I-T, letting it go. And if you have prayers or intentions you wish to share with the angels and with God, you can silently bring them into your heart right now and share them informally, intimately. And they are here to amplify your prayers. They are here to support you and to bring you more love. Love is the elixir that breathes goodness into everything. Every cell of our body, every thought in our mind, and every emotion in our heart. Just imagine, if you will, that the angels are filling the space you are in with a soft pink light filled with love that has been calibrated just for you. And while you rest or go about your day, this beautiful bubble of light will be with you. It will be bringing you goodness. It will be helping to support you. It will serve as a buffer between you and all the other stuff happening in the world. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to heal everything. In this moment, you have permission to just be you. Just as you are right now. This beautiful emanation of divine love, the breath of God that is you. Uniquely and wonderfully you. And I personally am so grateful for you. I love that somehow magic has brought us together. Isn't that incredible? That somehow you found your way to this message right now. That somehow it exists in the virtual world so that you pull out your phone or your iPad or your computer and this message is here for you. And that you get to hear my voice and the stories and feel love from the angels. We live in such an amazing time. And I am so joyful to get to share it with you. In this moment, I am surrounded by so much beauty, and I share this beauty with you. I share with you the green of the trees and the softness of the breeze. I share with you the way the light streams through the canopy of trees and shadow and light play together on the rooftops. I share with you the soft chirping of the birds in the neighborhood. I share with you the soft wisps of clouds gently moving across a blue sky. I share the beauty of this realm with you. And this beauty reflects the beauty within you too. Because you are made through the breath of God, and you too are beautiful. You're so beautiful and magical and wonderful. And I'm so deeply grateful for you. And so, my beautiful friend, I invite you to rest and replenish. And while you do, your angels will be with you, as they are always. And we're going to move on over into story time. So for story time, I am guided to take us through the pages of an old Sunset magazine, volume 5 from 1900. If you've been listening to the podcast, I love to go through these old issues of this magazine. Sunset was originally published by the Southern Pacific Railway. It eventually, over the century, evolved into the Sunset magazine we know today. So it's still in publication, it's just a very different magazine now. But the one that we're going to flip through is from May 1900. And I think part of what I'm so enchanted by is I have loved California all of my life. Even though I grew up in Chicago, I've been heavily imprinted with and fell in love with California, even though I had never been here. And I had my first trip here in 1985 when I was 23 years old, and I visited Los Angeles with girlfriends, and I fell even more in love with it. It met and exceeded all of my expectations, and within a few months I would move out to Los Angeles. And I have continued living in California except for 1 year when I lived in New York. I now live in Northern California in the Bay Area. And so to me, this history feels very accessible versus if I'm reading about the history of something that happened in the 1500s, that might feel very far away for me. But something in the 1900s, I was born in 1962, it feels more accessible to me. So let's go through this issue and see what we can find. We start off with an ad for a book called The Wild Flowers of California. Their Names, Haunts, and Habits by Mary Elizabeth Parsons, illustrated by Margaret Warrener Buck. Here's a description. This is the only work of the kind treating of the flora of the Pacific Coast. It is a book that every lover of nature should have to carry with him into the fields of this land of flowers. It has been pronounced invaluable by all who have used it, and it has proved interesting to young and old alike. So if you're into botany and wild flowers, perhaps this would have been a book for you. Then there is a very long index because this is a compilation of 6 months worth of issues. And then we start off with an ad. Again, this is a magazine published by the railway company, so they are advertising their excursions. So they're talking about taking a trip in a Pullman sleeping car, San Francisco to Denver, Omaha, and Chicago by way of Salt Lake City. It's the Rio Grande Western Railway. There's 3 through trains daily, carrying all classes of equipment, and a perfect dining car service. How do you think you would have held up traveling across the country by railway back then? You know, when you see it in things like the Orient Express, it always seems very grand. I like to think that if I existed back then, I would have the money for things like that, but the truth is I probably would have been working class and I would have not been able to sleep in the grand quarters like a Pullman sleeping car. Although if I'm going to dream that I have gone in the Wayback Machine, I am going to make sure in my vision I have lovely accommodations. In other episodes, we have shared with you that the Hotel del Coronado was the place to be down near San Diego. It is being advertised here as well. I have personally stayed here in this lifetime as Laurel. 700 elegant rooms on 20 acres of ground. The Hotel del Coronado is a synonym for home during the winter months to great numbers of the best American families. And when they say the best American families, they are speaking of the very wealthy, not your ordinary workers. To pleasure-loving travelers, it also stands for all that is most enjoyable. It is renowned for the social standing of its patrons. Again, the social standing of its patrons. It's like the country club hoity-toity set, for its dimensions and magnificence, for its superb cuisine and admirable service to the beauty of its tropical gardens and the lavish... I can't talk here. Hold on. Let's try this again. For this, see, I'm not even going to cut that out. This is what it's like recording a podcast. Let's try this again. For its superb cuisine and admirable service, for the beauty of its tropical gardens, and the lavish provision made for the amusement of its guests, both indoor and out. Billiards, private theater, and ballroom, orchestra, fishing pier, golf links, game preserves, botanical gardens, boat houses, bath houses, race course, and ostrich farm. Because who does not value a good ostrich farm? So this would be the place to be. And you would have to have money, and societal standing, the likelihood of which I would not have been the client base that they were seeking to serve. But these days we can all go to Del Coronado. And I guess another thing to reflect upon is back then people would come from the East Coast because, winters in the East Coast were not fun. Even in the summers there was humidity and things like that. So to be able to come out here to the West Coast where you are near the ocean and there's no humidity and the weather's fantastic all the time, most of the time, especially in San Diego. We now go to Santa Catalina Island, which is 3.5 hours from Los Angeles by boat. And you know what? I don't think I've ever been there. In all the years that I lived in Los Angeles, I never went to Catalina Island. It's the most popular seaside and mountain resort of the West, a field for health, pleasure, rest, and study. Features of this resort are the wonderful marine gardens viewed through glass-bottom boats to 12 fathoms depth, fine golf links, night water carnivals, 7th season famous Catalina Island Marine Band, delightful still water boating and bathing, tennis courts, coast excursions, and the average temperature in the summer months is 65 degrees. A little piece of trivia for you about Catalina. On the Avalon side of the island, there are buffalo. So somebody brought buffalo over there, and they now live their best lives over there. I think they're wild, but they're protected. I should probably go Google this so I can speak to you about it with some actual knowledge. Okay, and I love how I said that like that would be hard for me to go and look up about the buffalo or bison on Catalina, as if I now had to go drive to the library and look through the index cards and find a book versus let me just get out my phone and type a few keystrokes and tell you about them. So here we are in the miraculous 2023 when I can simply take out my phone and Google Wikipedia and read this to you in a matter of moments. So this is from Wikipedia. The Catalina Island bison herd is a small group of introduced American bison living on Catalina Island off the coast of Southern California. In 1924, so this would be 24 years after the magazine I'm reading to you was published, several bison were acquired and, before the end of 1925, brought to Catalina. The bison are now quite popular with the tourists. Some buildings have been painted with images of bison and decorated with bison weather vanes. Over the decades, the bison herd numbered as many as 600. The population currently numbers approximately 100. How's that for interesting? You don't get that kind of information in just your everyday run-of-the-mill podcast. I am here for you. Shall I continue reading about the bison? Are you interested in this? Registered as privately owned agricultural livestock in a fenced, restricted area, it has been commonly reported that the bison were imported in 1924 for the silent film version of Zane Grey's Western tale, The Vanishing American. So let's just continue, shall we? There's some more information about railroad riding. And now we go on to an article, it might be an ad, for Riverside, California, the greatest orange growing district on earth. Now, one of the reasons I find this so fascinating is because Riverside now is an urbanized area. But back then in 1900, it was agricultural. So here's what it says. $4,000 a year. California is wonderful. A man who owns 30 acres is a country gentleman. He does just about work enough to keep himself in good physical condition and clears from $3,000 to $4,000 a year. I know one man who makes $3,000 a year on 10 acres of ground. They press the button and nature does the rest. I love that. The average of intelligence, I should say, is higher than in any other state. It surprises me that everyone who has a little capital has not gone to California to live. And I will say back in 1900, $4,000 a year was a tremendous amount of money. The most perfect type, thus spoke Chauncey M. Depew. I don't know if that's how he's pronounced his name, but that's how I will pronounce it now. It's D-E-P-E-W, Depew, after a visit to the state, and he might have added that Riverside is the exponent and example of the highest development in California, material, moral, social, intellectual. Here it is the rule rather than the exception for a man to make $3,000 a year on 10 acres, and very much greater returns are not unusual. Now let's talk oranges. A few facts. It didn't really say that. I just said that. It just says oranges. But I just got a little creative there. A few facts about Riverside that will stand out in your memory are these. It is the greatest orange growing district in the world, both as to quantity and quality of its products. Hence is why it is called Orange County. Again, I added that. I don't know why you need to know that. I'm just being authentic. It has two, can you tell I'm a little punchy today as I record this? It has two of the most famous avenues in the world, Magnolia and Victoria. Their combined length is 20 miles, mostly through continuous orange groves within the corporate limits of the city and aligned with beautiful homes. 56 square miles. The area within and the city is 56 square miles, and the colony or district comprises a territory almost twice as large. There are 160 miles of graded streets within the city limits, and the mileage of the city is nearly double that. So again, back then, having paved roads was a big deal, especially out here on the West Coast. 11 miles of the city streets are paved with asphalt and macadam, M-A-C-A-D-A-M. I don't know what that is. The natural roads are the finest in all the world, never muddy and very little dust. Then they go on to talk about the irrigation system. They say Riverside is the richest city in the world and has the largest per capita income. Yet it has no millionaires and no paupers. There is an even and equitable distribution of wealth naturally incident to the character of the industries in which the people are engaged. I wonder if that's true. So it's really selling you on coming out to Riverside in 1900. Why not? Where else are we going to be? If I had read that, I would have come out. Because at the time I would have thought oranges are awesome. It's food-based. They're getting me out here with the promise of delicious food and good weather. And of course I would go. Sure, let's go. Let's migrate to Riverside, California. Okay. Now, how about if I read to you a little bit about San Francisco, because that happens to be the next article. The headline says, San Francisco, the convention city. The requirements for a city that aspires to entertain large organizations of a national or international character are many and varied, and there are but few American cities that seriously compete for the honor. Aside from the important considerations of suitable hotels, halls, transportation, etc., common needs of all large gatherings, there are those peculiar to various bodies. Political considerations influence the great party conventions, preponderance of membership in certain sections, the meetings of the secret orders. I wonder if they're talking about the Masons, the Freemasons there. And religious, I have to flip the page here, but it's not really a page. It's virtual. It's on my iPad. I just have to scroll. So let's see, the last sentence said that I left off. It says, and religious bodies are moved by similar motives, hence the race has not always been to the swift nor the battle to the strong. The great city of San Francisco, at the gateway to the Orient, has opened its portals to national gatherings of many of the largest organizations of the United States. And these days we would say the gateway to Asia. I want to acknowledge that. The National Educational Association, the Knights Templars, the Grand Army of the Republic, and the Christian Endeavorers all found a characteristically hospitable welcome to the city by the Golden Gate. All enjoyed the largest attendance in their history and made accessions of strength and influence that have been far-reaching in their effect. The conditions which rendered these meetings so preeminently successful, and which make San Francisco worthy of the prefixed article in the title, The Convention City, are not far to seek. And this is a very long article that is singing the virtues of holding a convention in San Francisco. And you know what? I am not finding this profoundly interesting. I know it's a bedtime podcast, and so it would probably be good for sleep, but since I'm reading it, I would like to be mildly amused as I do so. So I'm going to skip to another article. And I'm going to move us over to a very short article called Red Letter Day in Yosemite. Yosemite is always heavily featured in these magazines, especially during this time in history. So here we go. Let's hear more about the beautiful Yosemite. The delights of June in Yosemite hold May Day pleasures, any whither of little value. That's a phenomenal word, any whither. It's all one word. It's any and then whither. Any whither of little value. Not that the valley's welcome at other times is a thing to be held in light esteem, but dates earlier than June from housekeeping standpoint fall within renovation space. The guardian spirits have been away on season coast outing. The while Arctic frosts and boreal fingers have been busy, the one to bind, the other to loose, and the debris of preceding years sodden under winter snows and winter rains asks time for disappearance. Advent of June, however, finds this valley world-swept and garnished. This is brilliantly written. And the beneficent work of renovation romance allies the greenwood tribes, fairies, and elfins of Mossland and of Ferndale, sprites of Leichenwold, and gnomes of golden Motherlock, all of them busy from dewy morn to dewy eve. For upon great occasions, like greater people, they are able to obey a common impulse and move in concerted acts. They are able to obey a common impulse and move in concerted action at the same time, so finitial interscene war may grow out of accidental tilt of a farthingale or far-fetched witticism upon the eyebrow of a court favorite. I have no idea what that sentence means. At the same time, let's try this. So finitial, F-I-N-I-C-A-L, interscene, I don't know what that word is. Farthingale, sounds lovely. I don't know what that is. I do understand a far-fetched witticism, but great language here. Okay, let's keep going. This is fun. At least I'm amused. Nothing earthly can be conceived more charmful than a certain June day of 1887 in this wall-encompassed Yosemite. appeals made to it every avenue of sensuous delight, arboreal and floral beauty, music bearing keynote to unspoken romance, and cyclopean granite architecture. Sorry, maybe you're not amused, but I am cracking myself up trying to read this. Commanding the silent worship of creating hand. So they've said the word arboreal a few times. May I share with you where I know this word from? So, of course, it means trees, arbor, trees, arboreal. But here's where I heard it, and here's where it always lives in my brain. How many of you love the series West Wing? So in the pilot episode of West Wing, one of the first storylines is that the president, who we haven't met yet, who will be played by Martin Sheen, has ridden his bike into a tree. So the West Wing staff gets alerted to this, and they're trying to figure out how to spin this to the press. And so Leo McGarry, played brilliantly by John Spencer, says something like, "What can I tell you? The president came to a sudden arboreal stop," or something like that. But he uses the word arboreal. The president came to a sudden arboreal stop. And Wes and I must have watched that episode at least a dozen times over the years. So that's what I know about arboreal. So you didn't even know you were going to get an extra little snippet of TV goodness here. Okay. And cyclopean. I mean, that's a great word. And we got a cyclopean. So let's see what other amazing language is in this article. Oak and cypress, pine and cedar, not painful to look upon, in sympathy with their feeble hold on life, but giants, young and old, abounding in wealth of foliage and superabundant vitality, trembling with speechlessness, happiness. This is so much fun to read out loud. Okay, where was I? Carpets of daisies and white violets, coppices of ceanothus, I guess so, blue and white, the latter in creamy sprays of bloom that mock the priceless creation of Mechlin and Brussels, and a fragrance so delicate it borders upon the spiritual, incredible azalean wealth, filling the ambient atmosphere with characteristic perfumes. Easter lilies in spotless white with hearts of gold, and exuberant, here we go, I'm going to give this a shot, Washingtonianium. So it's Washingtonianium. So Washingtonianium. I don't know. It's 24 armed thyrus bearing large fragrant effervescence, creamy white lined and dotted with red and purple, not infrequent, also the Humboldt lily and the well-known panther and tiger species of this floral class. This is just beautiful to read. But I will move on because you might be bored. Even though it is a sleep podcast, I would still like you to feel like there's something engaging here. But I am having a good time. This is amazingly written. Well, let me see what else I can find for us. We're just going to leave this beautiful language, this beautiful description of Yosemite, using words I have never heard of before. But we'll continue. And let's call this now a note from our sponsor, which is Southern Pacific Railway, because we now have railway notes. So this is what's happening in the development of the railroad around this time. Only 17 miles of track laying is needed to complete the new coastline of the Southern Pacific in California between San Francisco and Los Angeles, and it is likely that the through trains will be running before the end of the year. So this is in May, so they're almost there. The Tavern of Castle Crags, the famous hostelry, I think that's how you say that, of the Sacramento Canyon, On the Shasta route will be open for the season on June 15th. The Illinois Central have further strengthened their Pacific Coast offices by the appointment as traveling passenger agent with headquarters at San Francisco of Mr. Frank Winship, formerly assistant ticket agent for the Southern Pacific at Los Angeles. The Galveston, LaPorte, and Houston Railway has been acquired by the Southern Pacific and will hereafter be operated in harmony with the Atlantic System lines of that company as the Galveston, Houston, and Northern Railway. Dining cars have been added to the equipment of Southern Pacific trains number 5 and 6 running between San Francisco and Ogden. That's good because I would want a good dining train if I am going by railway. By a new schedule made effective May 13th on the Ogden route of the Southern Pacific, the time of the Overland Limited between San Francisco and Chicago was shortened 2 hours. That's good. That's less time that you need to be there. The Limited now leaves San Francisco at 10 a.m., arriving in Chicago at 9:30 a.m. the third morning. The Fast Owl Limited of the Southern Pacific between San Francisco and Los Angeles now leaves Los Angeles at 7 p.m. and arrives at San Francisco at 9:45 a.m. This permits overland passengers to make transfer to the Overland Limited at Oakland Pier. A reduced rate of $88.50 for the round trip will be made from San Francisco, Los Angeles, and other California common points to Philadelphia and return account Republican National Convention. Tickets at this rate will be on sale on June 12th and 13th. So just in case you were going to attend the convention. The seaside excursions from New Mexico and Arizona points, which have been a feature of the vacation season for several years, will be inaugurated by the Southern Pacific Company for 1900 with departure of first excursion from El Paso and Phoenix on Thursday, May 24th, continuing weekly thereafter until August 30th. Round-trip tickets are sold for these excursions from principal stations between El Paso and Yuma to Santa Monica, Long Beach, San Pedro, Santa Barbara, San Buenaventure, Avalon, Catalina Island, Newport, and San Diego at a greatly reduced rate, enabling residents of the interior to escape the heated term and enjoy a rest where cool sea breezes blow. Sounds good to me. Sign me up. Okay, our final article is entitled Camping Among the Sequoias. Oh, the sequoias are so magnificent. Those are the giant redwoods. So let's hear about this. There were 3 of us, Clark, Jack the Burro, and myself. And we were out for a good time in primitive style. Our tricks for getting on were all borrowed from the hunting and fishing stage of a man, save that our implements for hunting and fishing were modern. Our camping, and listen, if there's any hunting in here, I will cut it out, just so you know. I'm not going to make you listen to that part. Any hunting and fishing, I will leave on the editing floor. I'll just get to the other parts. Our camping and cooking were quite old style. We determined to walk from the floor of the great San Joaquin Valley to the highest ridge of the Sierras and back again by a different route. We accomplished in 16 days, with and without trails, 200 miles of the roughest mountain travel. The season was latter part of September, when the frost of the upper ranges put enough snap into the nights to make sleeping around a blazing campfire the sweetest pleasure known. By the time we reached Sperry's home grove, the Calaveras group of Sequoias, we were quite accomplished in eating, sleeping, and walking. These were about the only arts our time permitted, and oh, the joy of a keen appetite, of healthy muscular exercise, of sweet, sound sleep. The Calaveras Grove had we not seen the South Park later, would have been to us the one great wonder of the world. As I look back at it now, I see too many tourists' tracks in the home grove, and Mr. Sperry's splendid table is too near. The South Park Grove, entirely out of civilization, must be reached on foot by 6 or 7 miles of trails, and is, therefore, less frequented. After a few nights in the Calaveras, I say nights, for in the midst of these forest giants the shadows are dark all day long, we set out for the South Grove, entering the thick shade of this biggest grove of the biggest trees in the world late in the afternoon. We had only time to find camp before the last ray of light had gone. These uninhabited forests contain 1,380 giants from 65 to 104 feet in circumference, of various ages from 1,000 to 6,000 years. We thought to sleep at the base of a giant tree out of a strange sense of protection from the deep, vast solitude. Several times our blankets were laid at the feet of some old father of the forest, but as many times taken up for the simple reason that man cannot sleep upright. All of these ancient trees have great cone-shaped banks of earth at their bases, composed of the falling bark, cones, and foliage of many centuries. On account of the gigantic proportions of the trees, the steepness of these slopes is not at first noticed. It is when one tries to sleep at an angle of 45 degrees that its reality is brought home to one. Finally, we gave up at the attempt and fared more comfortably under a smaller pine tree, which was only about 1,000 years of age. As I lay on my back trying to find a peephole to heaven through the black mass of foliage nearly 400 feet deep directly above. That's beautiful writing. I had thoughts I cannot express. It was one of the religious moments of my life. The next day we awoke late, for it was still dark in that shady solitude. An interesting idea presented itself that morning, and we spent the day in a curious investigation. The beautiful pine tree near which we slept was quite as tall as its giant neighbors, but much smaller in all other proportions. It bore no marks of fire as all the other sequoias do. Some of the latter have been burned hollow, and some have been almost girdled with fire, and yet they live. We could not find one of these sequoias which had escaped the great fire, and we examined hundreds of them during the day. Right in their midst are great numbers of other conifers as tall as the giants but more slender. They would be great themselves in any other company. Not one of these lesser giants showed any signs of fire, and we examined many of them carefully. Some of these pines and firs showed by their rings, on authority of Mr. Sperry, that they are at least 1,000 years old. When, then, did the mighty forest fire rage among the oldest trees of the earth, and how old must the sequoias be that were so large 1,000 years ago that their latter growth makes not so great change in their appearance? The personal observation of this convincing evidence of the date of the Great Fire and the great age of the giant sequoias leaves in the mind a strange impression not easily effaced. When we again go to the big trees, we shall walk, but not until we have ridden as far as the Southern Pacific and the stagecoach can carry us. It is far better to reserve time and strength for the high Sierras, where walking, or rather climbing, is an exhilarating exercise. The people who have time to kill would not care for such a glorious trip anyway, hence our advice to all true pleasure seekers is to save time by taking the essentials of an outfit and going as far on the journey as possible by rail and stage. One's time will be all too short in a country where 10 miles is a good day's journey, and where to camp for days on the same spot, making little excursions here and there, is of all things to be desired. My partner and I refer to our Sierra camp as one of our most delightful experiences, and now that these sequoias are to be saved to posterity by our national government, we are planning another trip this season. Had the United States refused to preserve these ancient gardens of God from commercial vandalism, we should have planned rather to migrate to some country which considers divine handiwork of more value than the dollar. And this is by C.W. Hodgson. And as somebody who has seen the giant redwoods, they are breathtaking, and I can completely appreciate that he called his experience one of the great religious experiences of his life, because he was able to visit them before they were so commercialized. He had an experience of the wilderness of them, the wildness of them. That must have been extraordinary. So this is our little foray into the Sunset magazine from May of 1900. And I hope that we have kept you good company as you drift off to sleep or go about your day. And I am so deeply grateful for the gift of you. I will add just one little tidbit that I just saw, just caught my eye. It's a Q&A. So they say, question, is there a through sleeping car between San Francisco and Franklin, Idaho, and what is the first class rate? The answer is no, but sleeping car accommodations are afforded between San Francisco and Ogden. Berth in a standard sleeper is $5.50. Berth in tourist is $2.50. Limited first class rate from San Francisco to Franklin, Idaho via Ogden is $32.75. Second class is $27.75. Train leaves San Francisco at 6 p.m., arrives Ogden at 5:30 a.m. the second day, connecting with Oregon Short Line, leaving Ogden at 8:15 a.m., due Franklin at 11:35 a.m. Just in case in your time travel endeavors, you want to make sure you bring enough money with you for traveling between San Francisco and Franklin, Idaho. You will want to bring at least $32.75 with you if you want to go first class. Hopefully you will find that to be helpful information in your time traveling adventures. So as I was saying, thank you. I love you. You're wonderful, and I'm so grateful for our time together. So you have a great rest. I wish you the sweetest of dreams, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Thank you so much.